Well, we're singing about Aloha because it is Aloha Sunday, and on every Aloha Sunday, we always speak to one of the ancient Hawaiian proverbs that were collected in a wonderful book written by Dr. Mary Kavenapukui called Olelo No'eau. That means wisdom sayings. We take a look at some of these wise words of wisdom from older Hawaiians, and we try to find that place in Hawaiian spirituality where our spirituality meets, and that way we can feel more connected with the people of this land and its spirituality. So the phrase we're looking at today is this: Ahuwale ka nane huna. Ahuwale means revealed, or to be made visible and to see. Ka means the. Nane is a riddle, or a puzzle, kind of a parable with a hidden meaning. The Buddhists might call it a koan. Huna means secret or hidden. Some of you may be familiar with the Hawaiian metaphysical philosophy called huna. Well, it means hidden and secret. So Mary Kavenapukui says that in English, this means that which was a secret is no longer hidden. Isn't that great? Wouldn't you like to know all of the secrets and all the hidden things that you think are hiding away from you? Wouldn't that be a good thing to know? Yeah? You say, no, I don't want to know. I'm really fine. I'm really fine not knowing anything else right now. Of course you want to know. Well, here's the real secret. I know where those secrets are. I know where they're hidden. And you do too, right? Where? Right here. Everything is right here. If you have that piece of divinity in you, which we talked about this morning, it's right here. And so we're about remembering. Finding the hidden secrets is really kind of about remembering. We all know lots of things. We have teachings that we have been raised up with. We have teachings that we got from our parents and our grandparents, teachings from our beloved ministers, teachers from our priests, teachers from the nuns in the school where we went. We have teachings galore. The difficulty that we're all facing a lot of times in life is, how do we know any longer what is really true for us at this point in life, and maybe what's not so true anymore? Because as we grow and as we expand in consciousness, we may find things that seem a little conflicting. I mean, it's easy. How many of you have heard of that phrase, look before you leap? Does that sound familiar? Have you heard about the one that says, he who hesitates is lost? Yeah? Okay, which is true? Do we look before we leap, or do we hesitate? They're both true, but they're both different. And that happens in life as we grow. Part of it is because what is appropriate for us at a certain point in life may not be true for us later, and we don't like that. We really like what is true to stay true for always and forever. And it just isn't like that with so much of what we think is true. An example of that is when I was a child, my mother told us, don't play with the stove, stay away from the stove. Anybody mother tell you that when you're a little kid? Of course. Stoves are hot. I know this in my family because when my little younger brother Jimmy was probably around 2.5, maybe 3, my mother was boiling a pot, a pan with a handle on it, on top of our old gas stove. She was hard boiling some eggs. And my little brother reached up and he grabbed the handle and he pulled it down. And to this day, he still bears the scars all on his shoulder and his back from that horrible burn. So that was very wise words from someone to say, don't go near the stove. Stay away from the stove. They're wise words until you're about 18. And then you come home from school and you say, Mom, cook me some eggs. And Mom says, what? Is the stove broke? Go fix them yourself. So what happened? Did the stove change? Is it less dangerous than before? Why is the truth for the 18-year-old different from the truth of 2? Because we grow and we expand. So what we need to understand very simply is that as we move through life and our consciousness expands, what may have been true for us at one point may not be true for us at another time, and that's really hard for us. The Buddha talked about this, and he knew this was going to be a difficult thing for his disciples. So right before he left, he gave them a parable. He said there was a man who was traveling on his life's journey, and he came to this large, vast expanse of water. And on the shore near him, it was roughness, and it was risky, and it seemed dangerous. But as he looked across this expanse of water on the other shore, it looked peaceful, and it was green, and it looked serene and safe. And he really wanted to be on that other side. But there was no boat, there was no bridge, and no way around. So he had an idea. What if I gathered up these sticks and reeds and bits of logs, and I tied them all together, and I made a raft, and then I laid on the raft, and I could swim and use the raft to hold me up, and I could swim across this vast expanse of water and reach the other side. And that is exactly what he did. He built the raft, and then he laid on it, and it held him up as he swam across, and he got to the other side. And then when he got to the other side, he looked at the raft and he said, wow, this has served me so beautifully. I think I should carry it with me. And the Buddha asked his students, do you think this was a wise thing to do? And the students said, no, Master. And he said, well, what if the man would take the raft, gently lay it on the ground of the new shore, with gratitude that it had lifted and carried him across the water, and then he went on his journey? Would that be wise? And the student said, yes, Master. Buddha said, good, because my teachings are the raft, and they are meant to carry you from where you are to the peaceful shore. But do not cling to them. That's so beautiful to understand, that the things that we think we know are true are lifting us and carrying us across. But it's really okay to lay them down with gratitude and to carry on. So the question obviously is, well then, what do we keep and what do we lay down? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Buddha gave his disciples what he called the 4 reliances. Now, they're Buddhist in origin, but they're really true across a spectrum for anyone on a spiritual journey. I want to talk about, these are things you can rely on in examining truths that we think we hold in our life. And they're basically this. Number 1, rely on the teaching, not the person. Rely on the meaning, not on the words. Rely on the definitive meaning, not the provisional. And we'll explain all that in a minute. Rely on your wisdom mind, not your ordinary mind. These are ancient Buddhist teachings called the reliances. And I want you to be aware of them when we begin to look at things we believe and maybe things that we want to question in our life. Let's look at the first one. Rely on the teaching, not the person. Now, this is very important for us because we're supposedly a Christian church. And a lot of people don't quite understand the kind of Christianity that we are. And I tell people very simply, we follow the teachings of Jesus. So that makes us a Christian church, in my opinion. And they say, well, no, there's other things you have to do. And we don't quite subscribe to that. The way I describe it to people is we seek what Jesus sought. We don't seek Jesus. We seek what Jesus sought. And Jesus sought essentially oneness with all people. Jesus himself said in the Gospel of John, my teaching is not my own. It comes from the one who sent me. So in this church, we use those teachings as our raft, but we separate them from the person. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't love Jesus. If you learn some great things from your mom, it doesn't mean that you don't love your mom. If you decide that some of the things that your mom believed in, you don't believe in anymore. I mean, how many of us agree 100% with our parents? Oh, you do, of course, because your mom's sitting right there. You better raise your hand. You better. Yes, I do. Look, Mom, I believe 100%. Okay, I don't want to put Mom on the spot. So, okay, you don't have to raise your hand, but just you can do it in your mind, or not, okay? How many of you absolutely believe 100% with what your parents were teaching you or the way they live? Of course you don't, because you're different and we live in different times. But just because you don't believe exactly what they taught and the way they live, it does not mean you don't love them. And parents, Just because your children don't behave and live and believe the same way you do does not mean they don't love you. Parents got to get that. And we all got to get it. We must separate the teaching from the teacher. So here we can love Jesus and we can love the teachings, and they are different for us. Eric Butterworth is a great unity writer, and he said it really clearly this way. He said, a key to understanding the teachings of Jesus is the discovery that Jesus did not place the emphasis on himself, but always on you, your unfoldment, your believing, and your achievement. That's a beautiful thing about the teachings of Jesus. They were about the teachings in you and staying afloat as you make the journey across the water to the place of peace. That's beautiful. The second reliance is to rely on the meaning and not the words. This is another big hang-up for people in all religions. In any religion in which there is a scripture, there is always a segment, usually, of that religion who will believe that that scripture takes the place of God. And whatever the scripture says is what they should do. And what our position here in Unity is, we first and foremost honor all scripture. I quote from scriptures of all different spiritual paths. But the second thing is, we understand and know that all scripture is just somebody's explanation of their experience of God. It is not the experience of God. And what is transformative and what is healing in each of our lives is not someone else's explanation, but it is the direct, transformative, electrifying experience of God itself. So that's what we teach. Now, I could go on forever on this. Obviously, I don't care a lot about the subject, but there is one who speaks very eloquently about it, and I love the fact that he happens to be an Episcopalian bishop. His name is Bishop John Shelby Spong. He has spoken here in our church. He's spoken all over the world. He's met with the Pope. He's extremely well regarded, and I thought maybe it'd be better if you hear these words from him.
Every church I know claims that we are the true church. And they have some ultimate authority. We have the infallible Pope. We have the inerrant Bible. The idea that the truth of God can be bound in any human system, by any human creed, by any human book, is almost beyond imagination for me. I mean, God is not a Christian. God is not a Jew or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Buddhist. All of those are human systems which human beings have created to try to help us walk into the mystery of God. I honor my tradition. I walk through my tradition. But I don't believe my tradition defines God. I think it only points me to God.
Did you hear that? That's lovely. I love the fact that he says, I honor my tradition. And so that's why we can say, if you're a Catholic, fantastic, what a beautiful tradition. Be a fantastic Catholic. If you're a Buddhist, be a great Buddhist. If you're a Baptist, be a fantastic Baptist. We want to honor the tradition because they lead us through that mystery to God. They are the raft, you see. They are the rafts that we've all made, or we've been given, or we inherited, or our parents made and showed us how to make them. But they are the rafts that carry us to the place of peace. Third, rely on the definitive meaning, not the provisional. Now, these words are directly from the Buddhist teaching, definitive and provisional. In Unity, we have corresponding words for that. For the definitive, we use the word absolute, and provisional, we use relative. What that basically means is that beyond and within any circumstance or situation, there is an appearance of something. That's kind of a provisional truth. And then there is the definitive truth, the real fundamental core truth of what that word or that situation is. And we need to find that meaning. For example, the way that I grasp this concept myself, I will give credit to the Course in Miracles. How many of you know someone who complains a lot? You don't have to raise your hand and don't point. Please don't point. Don't point. If you don't know anyone that complains a lot, call me. I have some names I can give you. And I do not want you to be deprived of that experience in life because it's really something. We all know those kind of people who are maybe kind of complain all the time, but they're negative all the time, and we have our own ways of reacting to that. When we get around the complainers, we can get angry because, they complain all the time, or we can go, I can't stand it. They just suck the energy around all of me. We have all these ways of describing how we react to these people. Course in Miracles gives us a more definitive way to look at that behavior. In fact, to look at any behavior that doesn't seem to be in spiritual alignment. The Course says very clearly, all unlovely behavior is nothing but a cry for love. So here you have a person who's complaining. If you can see the definitive truth that underneath all that complaining is really just a cry for love, that's looking at the definitive meaning of the behavior, not the superficial meaning of the behavior, not the provisional meaning. So what the Buddha is saying is when we get involved in either words or situations, always look for that fundamental spiritual truth and the meaning behind anything, and not the superficial one. So the Buddha told a story that emphasized this about a nun from China named Huna. She was born in the year 1223, which I find amazing because she devoted her life to the discovery of the meaning of existence. In the year 1223, this is like when the Crusades were going on. Here were people in the world struggling, meditating to find the meaning of existence. In the year 1280, she went to Japan and studied with the Zen master, still not finding success. Until one day, she was carrying a bale of water, a bucket of water. And as Buddhists are often mindful, she was mindful and noticing the reflection of the moon in the bucket of water as she walked. And then as she walked, the bamboo ribs on the side of the bucket began to break and deteriorated to the point where the staves of the bucket broke open. The bottom fell out and all of the water spilled onto the ground and disappeared, and with it, the reflection of the moon. So as she stared at that empty place, she looked up and she saw the moon. And she realized that all of her life, she had been living looking at a reflection of life and not the reality of life. And in that moment, she changed. And she knew then the ultimate meaning of life for her. So when we see people, we encounter people that aren't perfect in our eyes, are we seeing just a reflection? Can we see beyond that? Can we say, I see that you're a reflection of God? No, I can see the actual divinity in you. That's the difference. And that's what the Buddha is saying we should look for. Charles Fillmore says that metaphysician finds it necessary to place his judgment in the absolute in order to demonstrate its supreme power. When we live in that kind of mindset of looking for the depth of meaning, looking for the divinity in people, looking for those kind of ultimate realities, we are in touch and in sync with the greatest power of the universe, and the transformation that comes from us is phenomenal, within us and without. The last one is this: rely on your wisdom mind, not on your ordinary mind. Now, the wisdom mind is a Buddhist way of saying what we say in this denomination, we call it the Christ mind. We take that word from the Apostle Paul, who said, put on the whole mind of Christ. It's that what we call superconscious. If you were Hindu, you would call it the Atman or the Brahman. And if you were a Buddhist, you might call it the Buddha within, or a Taoist, you would call it the Tao within. But it's that ultimate part of our mind that is always the highest and best, that is always connected in feeling that spiritual link together. The Hawaiians would call it the mana or the kanaloa, that highest part of our thinking. Think and see the world with that, not with your ordinary mind. In our ordinary mind, Jesus called your earthly mind, or your carnal mind, Paul calls it. It's that part of our mind that's really connected to the sort of feeling way of the world. When we can see the world and live from that place, that's where we make a difference. Again, Charles Fillmore says, through the quickening of the Spirit, we are loosed from all limiting ideas and are set free in the Christ consciousness or the realization of the absolute. That quickening of the Spirit, that's how we make that shift into that higher way of thinking. And the way we've been teaching it lately is very simple. 3 little things. Not prayer, meditation, and good works. That's different. These are other 3 little simple things. They come from Paramahansa Yogananda, the founder of the Self-Realization Fellowship. I showed it to you earlier, several months ago. Read a little, meditate more, and think about God all the time. That's how you do it. That's how to do these things. Read a little, meditate more, and think about God all the time. If we can practice those 3 things, we will begin to live in that absolute. And whenever we confront a situation we don't know what the answer is, we can say, I don't see it, God. I know that it's supposed to be there. My minister said on Sunday it was supposed to be there, but I don't see it. So then you can say, Spirit, help me see it. You can ask for help and it will be given. What I want you to do in this moment is to call to your mind, if you will, some teaching, some axiom of life that you hold true, that you learned from some beloved person in your life. Parent, grandparent. It can be something like, don't talk to strangers. Did you learn that when you were a kid? Don't show your hands. Just say, don't talk to strangers. Now, what I want to invite you to do is to separate the teaching from the person who taught it. Because though you may love whoever taught you that, I want you just to separate those 2. And this is an affirmation to make. I let go of my attachment to my teachers. Okay? I let go of my attachment to my teachers. Can you say it with me? Let's say it. I let go of my attachment to my teachers. Good. So I can still love mom, dad, grandma, whoever, but I'm separating that from the teaching. I look for the meaning behind the words. Don't talk to strangers. But if you were to ask Jesus, who is a stranger? What would you think he would say? Well, they did say at one point, he said, love your neighbor as yourself. And for most of us that live in Hawaii, our neighbors are strangers. You know, if you live in a condo, you very likely don't really know the people very well. But Jesus then went on to describe neighbors as being anyone. If we're all connected in spirit, and if everyone is a part of that divine nature of God, can there be a stranger? There can only be other expressions of God I haven't met yet. There can only be people that are related to me in spirit, like we sang in the beginning, we are one in the spirit, but I don't know you yet. There can be no stranger. So yeah, looking to the meaning behind the words is important. Will you make this affirmation with me? Let's say it together. I look for the meaning behind the words. I seek to know the absolute truth. I want to know not the provisional truth, not the truth that's relative. I want to know the ultimate truth. Can you claim that? Let's say it together. I seek to know the absolute truth. Beautiful. That may be the one that's ultimately truth for you, but this is the one, I think, that if you choose this one to remember above all else today, it will be the one that brings you the gifts of every other reliance, because I seek meaning from my highest mind. Because this is the one that says, at the end of your reading a little bit and you're meditating more, this is where you're thinking about God all the time. That's where this will happen. Can you join me and say this out loud together? I seek meaning from my highest mind. Beautiful. Beautiful. I think if you can practice these things, or at least keep them uppermost in your mind, to question what you believe, because it's always the questions in life that will move us forward. So you make the questions, find the answers inside, and all of us together will reach that peaceful shore. Will you close your eyes with me for just a moment, please? We're going to come into a time of meditation. And our beloved friend Shen is going to play the nose flute as part of the Hawaiian experience of spiritual music. I want you to allow this music to just open your heart. Remember that when we soften, we remember. And when we feel hard, we forget. So soften ourselves in this quiet time together. To listen in this quiet time. To find the hidden secrets and let them bubble up for us. To be able to lay down those things that no longer serve us. To trust God as we come together in the sacred and holy silence.